Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me. As a regional center representative, we are just thrilled to be able to be looking at how we can expand social rec programs, expand the opportunities of social recreation, and how the regional centers can be a part of that. So I'm going to talk about what it looks like to work with a regional center to launch a social recreation program and to receive regional center funding for that service. So the first thing that we want to look at is what's called the vendorization process. And this is the process that any interested provider does with their regional center so that the regional center can make sure the provider meets all requirements to provide the service. So these are things like writing a program design or a program description, completing the application to make sure that providers meet the requirements, talking about rates, which we're going to talk a little bit more in one of our next slides, and just going through all of the paperwork process. So the regional center will support an interested service provider in going through that process so that somebody can go from starting their service to being able to implement their service or provide that service to their community. The vendorization process does have a timeline attached to it. So a regional center has 45 days to process a completed application. And this is tied to regulation, but it's also really important that this application is completed and accurate. And a lot of regional centers will, like I said, support you through that process. And it's important to pay attention to those details, because if we're not paying attention to all the details in the application, then that can be what can hold up the process. Now, when we talk about what the process actually looks like, it's going to be a little different depending on the regional center. So the application and forms and the requirements for social rec are going to be the same as when they relate to Title 17 regulations, but how a regional center walks you through that process is going to look very different. So if you are interested in providing a social recreation service or getting funded by a regional center to provide that service, you really need to reach out to your local community services department at the regional center that serves the county that you are providing that service in. If you are unsure of which regional center serves the area that you are in, you can go to DDS's website, the Department of Developmental Disability Services, and that can link you to the regional center in your area. Now, let's walk through an example. If you were in San Francisco or San Francisco Bay Area and working with Golden Gate Regional Center. Next slide. So if you are in Golden Gate Regional Center's catchment area and you wanted to provide a social recreation service, the first thing that you would do is submit an email to the email address that we have on the slide, vendor@ggrc.org. That information is on our website. Most regional centers have similar information on their website for interested service providers. So at GGRC, when we hear that you're interested in providing a service, we'll send you a new vendor questionnaire. And that helps us get more information from the interested service provider about the type of service that they want to do, the ages they might be supporting, where they might be providing the service, and giving us that information at the beginning helps us assign a community resource developer to work with you. The community resource developer is that person that will really walk you through the entire process. Now, usually we'll have people email and send and request a new vendor questionnaire, but sometimes people will talk to their social worker and talk about a service that they're using in the community to see if they can get that approved for social recreation. And we'll have outreach from social work or other community members who have suggestions of services so that we also can do outreach in that way to fund those services. But once we know that somebody wants to provide a service, we assign them a community resource developer. They will walk through the vendorization paperwork with that service provider. They will go over what requirements might be around writing a description of the service. They'll read that description that gets submitted, give feedback on where there might be some changes, or like to clarify some things more, explain things more, and talk about what looks really strong with that. Because we really want to work together with our interested provider to make sure that they have that completed vendorization application. Once that vendorization application is received and it's completed, then internally we work through the application approval process and make sure that we get everything approved and entered into our system. And when everything's entered into our system, that provider gets a letter saying that they are now vendorized for that service and they can begin providing services. They'll also get additional information that they will need on things like billing for services and other information that they may need on referrals for services as well.